Welcome to this quantum security and defense presentation. Case Study Country-wide QKD network throughout the Maltese Islands. And thank you for being a valued member of our community. Andre Xuereb is a full professor of quantum physics at the University of Malta, where he established the Quantum Research Group, and founder and CEO of Merqury Cybersecurity. He read for an undergraduate degree in mathematics and physics at the University of Malta, a PhD in theoretical physics at the University of Southampton in the UK, and a master's degree in entrepreneurship at the University of Malta. He is currently reading for a master's degree in diplomacy. Since 2021, Andre is Malta's ambassador for digital affairs. In addition to this, he is also chief scientific officer of an artificial intelligence startup, married to a lawyer, and the proud father of 3 wonderful children.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you, Anna and Steve, for the invitation. And it's a pleasure to meet everyone. And as they say, kind of good morning, afternoon, and good evening, depending on wherever you are in the world. And yes, so I'm Andre. I'm a professor of physics, quantum physics at the University of Malta. I'm founder and CEO of Mercury Cybersecurity, and actually, I've also got a diplomatic job, but let's not worry about that for now. And I thought today, kind of in the spirit of the conversation we've been having now, I thought today I'd kind of present some of the work we've been doing in Malta to build a quantum network, and I'll speak a bit around to the context around that as well. Present some of the challenges and how we've been solving or attempting to solve some of these challenges, and hopefully kind of I'll each of you will find something interesting, and we can discuss later or during the Q&A. Feel free to reach out, and if you want to discuss further on the if there's any points of common interest. So first of all, I mean, this audience might be familiar, it's probably familiar with this point, but it's nice to kind of begin with a fresh slate, blank slate rather, and ultimately, we know nowadays, we've known for a few years, that communication systems are no longer safe. What does that mean? It means that if someone has access to a quantum computer, for instance, they will be able to reverse engineer or break into our communications, our encryption methods. And this is also wrapped up in something called the store now, decrypt later attack, which is even worse, which is where people eavesdrop upon or store data nowadays, hold on to it for a few years, and then feed it to a quantum computer in 5, 6, or 7 years' time when those quantum computers are available. I would go a bit further and say that the threat is actually a bit wider, in the sense that we don't yet know what we don't yet know. There might be classical high-performance computing algorithms which will come online, in 5, 10 years from now, that we know nothing about, which could also break some forms of cryptography that we use nowadays. So in other words, the threat is broader than just quantum, but at least it's good that the media is already kind of focusing on this, the quantum threat at least. Beyond this, and perhaps kind of for an international audience, I also like to emphasize this point. Depending on where you are in the world, but particularly in Europe, it's not just a question of, well, we would like to have secure communications because secure communications are nice. It's also a question that secure communication is actually a basic right for citizens in most countries in Europe, either constitutionally or enshrined in some other way in legislation. What this means is that kind of seeking secure communication or technologists building tools for secure communications, that's a necessity. It's something which we actually should strive to work towards, to give citizens the option to have secure communications when they want to. And I'll send these slides to you, Anna and Steve, to distribute to the group if you can, because people can click on these links or scan the QR codes, because there's a whole paper around this one little sentence that I stole. So kind of against this backdrop, some countries have started acting to solve this quantum problem. And again, in the EU, for context, there's something called the European Quantum Communication Infrastructure, EuroQCI initiative, and this was launched in 2019, 2020. And this is where the European Commission basically said, there's this problem, let's somehow build a Europe-wide quantum communication system, quantum communication grid, to allow at least our governments and public sector entities to communicate between themselves in a quantum secured fashion. Okay, and all of this is intended to be based on QKD and quantum secure communications, or quantum communications more generally. Now, the whole thing is kind of is being implemented in two parallel segments. So there's the terrestrial segment on land and a space segment in space, obviously. And terrestrially, we're currently in the first phase where each EU member state is basically familiarizing itself with QKD networks, what they are, what they're not, how they work, how they don't work, and so on and so forth. And this is kind of the inspiration for the rest of my talk. In the coming couple of years, we'll see these networks start to interconnect between themselves, bringing a whole host of other problems. And hopefully around the kind of 2030 or so, we'll start seeing the kind of the operational phase of the network. This will be complemented by quantum capable satellites launched between about 2027 and 2030 by the European Space Agency. So that's the kind of this is the moonshot. This is the aim. Now, in Malta, in the current phase, we have what is called PRISM, which is the this kind of quantum secured network, which is sorry, I need to take a screenshot, otherwise they will not pay me for this. But it's a network which we're building to act as a testbed network for securing the public sector IT infrastructure throughout Malta using QKD. And this project brings within it both the private sector and the public sector, and you have academia, so kind of bringing within it all the stakeholders. And we've also got a telecommunication operator on board, which gives you an idea that we're also looking into kind of commercializing, operationalizing this in the near future. Now, the way we chose to interpret the mandate in Malta is to say, okay, we have a small country, we're fairly isolated because we're an island. So let's forget about long distance issues. Let's forget about kind of hundreds of kilometers and focus instead on our unique selling point. We're small. So the idea is to actually focus on building a countrywide, rather complex QKD network that will reach basically kind of the country end to end approximately. And on top of this, we said, let us also admit that we can't kind of lay fresh fiber everywhere. So instead, we're going to use an existing telecommunications network, warts and all. And this is kind of the key challenge that we kind of set ourselves, and that we are working to overcome. So over the next year or so, we're kind of growing this network from the current nucleus of 3 or 4 nodes to the entire country. So let's kind of get into the details here a bit. So building a quantum key distribution network like this with present day technology on an existing telecommunications network is a challenge. It's a challenge for us. It's been a challenge for the manufacturers. In fact, there's been a lot of back and forth and lessons learned and custom devices built and tests being made, etc., etc. In a way, this is a good thing because it gave us as Merqury we're supporting the technological growth of this network. It gave us a lot of experience in building and designing these networks. It's a very non-linear optimization problem, but we'll get to that in a second. But kind of it also goes to show that yes, there needs to be some thought given as to how to deploy QKD in the real world. When you don't have dark fiber everywhere, you don't have greenfield. You're using whatever infrastructure there already exists. So yeah, deploying over lit fiber is painful, and this necessitated us deploying basically every single technology we could get our hands on. There's continuous variable QKD, discrete variable QKD, for those of you who know the difference between the two. For everyone else, it's just different kinds of QKD. There's basically 3 manufacturers deployed at the moment. Hopefully we'll get a few more in the future. And the reason behind this is, well, one, we wanted to kind of use as many manufacturers as possible to ensure that what we build is not vendor specific. It's kind of as broad as possible. But beyond this, it's this optimization problem that I said earlier. we needed to build a connected network. So we needed to identify which fibers are available to us and which specific quantity distribution device works on each specific fiber, and iterate until we finally had a kind of a mathematical solution that fit everything. And this was a kind of a year and a half, 2 year long process to build this network. And as I said, lots of lessons learned. Happy to talk about those later on. We also ended up with a non-trivial topology. So it's not a line, it's not a tree, it's not a fully connected mesh, it's something in between. And again, this is kind of an artifact, a feature of the fact that we're just using whichever fibers are available to us and we can work with. And what are the restrictions in the real world that are kind of that we came across? So if you've ever dealt with optical fibers, these are logically split into a number of channels depending on frequency or wavelength. And operators basically populate as many channels as they can in order to kind of recover their investments. Now, quantum key distribution doesn't like lots of light on fiber. So depending on which channels are available to us, which channels can be used. We had issues because you might have a channel which is available, but it's too close to a classical channel, it can't be used. Depending on how much light the provider is shining into the fiber, because too much light means QKD devices don't work. Depending on how many channels are in use, again, too many channels, QKD devices are not going to work, and depending on how long the fibers are or how much loss there is. Again, the more loss there is, the less tolerant you are to any of these, which is again why we had this kind of long iterative process, which I'm happy to kind of work with people on if they have a similar similar challenge in the future. But we have reached a point where we can now overcome this, and kind of in the spirit, kind of what we are trying to achieve through this test bed and in Mercury more generally is to bring QKD closer to real world deployment. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that kind of as our guiding philosophy, we believe that quantum key distribution should be straightforward to integrate into existing ICT infrastructure, existing fiber, existing hardware as much as possible, existing software, existing telecommunications infrastructure, existing everything. Okay, as much as possible. We don't believe that any real world client like a bank will overhaul all of their systems for one single technology. Even if it makes their communication safer, they're not going to overhaul everything. Furthermore, we believe that the end user does not care and should not care about the underlying technology. They might wish to know what a security proof is and kind of what that implies about the security of individual devices, but they don't care whether it's CV or DV, continuous or discrete variable. They don't care whether it's coming from Lux Quanta or ID Quantique. They don't care about how many trusted intermediate nodes there are. All they want is a solution that works end to end and is transparent. And ultimately, they don't want to rely on having quantum physics PhDs to teach them how to make things work. So what Mercury does is we sit between the device vendors and the end user to basically realize this philosophy. Now, I'm going to kind of run through some of the technologies we ended up developing for the Maltese quantum network in order to make this happen. And all of these technologies are at various stages of commercialization. And I'm much more than happy to discuss with any of you here or offline if you're interested in testing things out, deploying what we have, or just working together. So first of all, we had to develop our own key management system because we found that all key management systems that we could find had some issues. They didn't work with multiple vendors. They were just not QKD ready. They had other issues. So we developed our own key management system from the ground up, and the whole thing is kind of it's centralized, which is again it's one of the few key management systems we know about, particularly in the QKD sphere, which is centralized. And this allows you to really look at the QKD network as a network rather than as a collection of point-to-point links, which you somehow need to figure out how to kind of glue together. So once you have this centralization, once you have this logical centralization, then you can really treat the whole thing as a network and use it end-to-end transparently. And in fact, kind of our key management system does all sorts of things. So we have kind of a centralized system that allows us to set up trusted nodes, ensures that there is enough key material between every pair of links. Basically, can manage the system as a network rather than as a collection of point-to-point links. It also allows us to monitor the network, and I'll show a screenshot of this later on, ensuring that everything is working, or that if something is not working, we're alerted through a dashboard and so on. Again, kind of the idea is bring QKD to a stage where people want to use it rather than as a, as a curiosity or as a laboratory. Our key management system handles the key material kind of between the QKD device and the end user. And what that means is that allows us to abstract away the different vendors, abstract away their different capabilities, and give them capabilities beyond their limitations. So we can aggregate keys and we can do certain things which are not possible in hardware, or they're not implemented in most hardware. We also have full and completely transparent support of trusted nodes. So all you ask is, I need a key between point A and point B. I don't care about how many nodes you go through, just give me a key. And the key management system does this. It does telemetry, so it monitors key generation rates and so on. And at the moment, we're also working on something which allows you to reserve keys for specific applications. This allows you to prioritize certain things, shall I say, and also optimally allocate keys. I'll explain something about this later on. I'm also running slightly out of time, but I hope there's not too much of an issue, Anna and Steve. Just to give you a sense of kind of our overall guiding philosophy in designing how a QKD system should work in the real world. We've basically operating upon this principle, which is abstracted in this cartoon over here. So the way our system works is that I have a QKD node in building 1, party 1, and a QKD node in building 2, party 2. My buildings are secure, physically secure. Okay, so I'm not gonna, there is some security within the buildings themselves, and we operate at the periphery, and therefore any point of presence in the building, in building 1, can communicate securely to any point of presence in building 2 using the QKD link. And this is done kind of at the level of the network itself. So it's fully transparent to the application, it's fully transparent to the end user. No upgrades, no new standard operating procedures, nothing else is necessary. And what is this graphic showing? Basically, once you do this, then any application in principle between point A and point E can communicate over the internet using quantum keys transparently. And if the packets are stolen or eavesdropped upon, they can be stored, but store now, decrypt later will never work, okay, because you're using QKD. One other thing which we wanted to work around is, because you can buy encryptors, network encryptors nowadays from Cisco, Thales, Juniper, I think, and maybe a few others, which can take keys from QKD devices. But there's a big problem with this, in that they encrypt all the network traffic using the QKD keys. Now, again, in the real world, you will have bottlenecks. You will have key generation rates dropping to single digits of bits per second on certain links. You don't want to waste these keys to encrypt cat videos. So what we've built, again, is another system that allows the administrator, so to speak, to choose which traffic to apply QKD to and which traffic to not apply QKD to. And this allows you to optimally allocate the QKD keys and use the keys for things which you want to use them, but not for anything else. So kind of just to give you a couple of screenshots of things in operation. So this is our network level monitor, which is in operation in Malta. There's only a few links which are currently online. We're bringing the others online over the coming months. There's a link to Sicily. That green line is an actual green line. So we have a link between Malta and Sicily in operation, as well as kind of terrestrial links. And yeah, there are no typos there. There are kind of bits per second of key generation rate on some of the links. It is what it is. That's what we can get in the real world. But this monitor allows us to see that the network is working, that all the devices are working, they're working well, and respond accordingly. Again, it allows operators to manage the network in the real world. We've also built some other bits and pieces of software and hardware which I think are quite useful. So we've got a test suite that basically interfaces with a QKD device and makes sure that the device is standards compliant. And you wouldn't believe how many bugs we found in commercial hardware using this test suite. So it is actually a very useful piece of software that we developed. We've also developed what we call the reference implementation, which is a QKD software emulator. You can deploy this locally or in Amazon AWS or wherever to kind of spawn a virtual QKD network. And we can also kind of put it in a box and kind of take it to trade shows and show how all of our stack allows you to use QKD fully transparently. And again, kind of it allows you to handle or deal with QKD devices without actually dealing with QKD devices. So learn how they work, learn their foibles, so to speak. We're also building towards and very close to getting what I call a QKD appliance. And that is basically a secure box, which brings with it not just the QKD device, but the QKD device and a bunch of classical non-quantum hardware that is as plug and play as you can get. So you put this box in your target network and it will allow you to do everything which I've just mentioned without you having to plug the devices separately, manage things separately, ensure that they are tamper-proof, and so on and so forth. So we're kind of building and kind of turning everything into a single plug-and-play appliance. Something I don't have time for, but if you're interested, I'm happy to talk about. We're doing a lot of standardization work at Merqury because there are some standards which are ambiguous, some standards which need extension, and some standards which are purely missing. So we are doing a lot of work on this front. I'm happy to work with anyone who's interested on this. So please just let me know. And because I'm so far over time, I'll just leave you with a couple of QR codes. One is for our GitHub page where we have a number of software packages which are open source or source available, many of the ones which I've mentioned, for you to play with and understand a bit better. And also our website where ultimately you can just get in touch with us if you'd like to learn more about anything I've just said or just curious about how these things work. Happy to talk to you through that. Thank you for your attention, and I'm just going to leave you with my email address, so please feel free to email me, but I will make these slides available in case you want to click on any of the links. So yeah, thank you.
I unmute myself. Thank you, Andre. That was great. We forgive you then that you were a bit longer.
Thank you.
I think I got direct messages to me with the questions, so I will read them to you. Could this groundbreaking collaboration with Oak Ridge National Laboratory, EPB, and the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga achieved the first ever transmission of an entangled quantum signal over a commercial network using multiple wavelength channels and automatic polarization stabilization without any downtime, be the catalyst that accelerates the widespread adoption of QKD and the infrastructure for quantum network protocols. Straight from Hanoi.
Fantastic question, and I kind of glossed over the fact that at the moment, at least in our network, we have no entanglement-based QKD. Which is mainly it's for two things. One, it's very expensive at the moment, but also because commercially no devices do what this demonstration does, which is work on commercial, so on lit telecommunications fiber. So this is groundbreaking from my point of view in that sense, if nothing else, in that you can actually kind of think about, contemplate going on commercial fiber. Now, in terms of it being the catalyst, Possibly, but yes and no. And yes, in terms of if you really believe in kind of the pure version of QKD, then from my perspective as a physicist, that promise can only really be realized by entanglement-based QKD. So, if you'd ask me kind of how do we get to the gold standard, to the absolute best possible security? Well, we need entanglement-based QKD. And finally, it looks like it's going to be available for use in the real world as I defined it. So yes, in that sense. No, perhaps in the sense that if you have organizations, as are most organizations we've dealt with, where the absolute gold standard is perhaps not fully required, they're okay working with continuous variable systems, for example, or non-entanglement based systems, um, then the technology is already available. So I would argue that the biggest stumbling block so far has been kind of the gap in the market, the thing which hides away the QKD from everyone else. So I firmly believe that end users do not care about what technology they're deploying, so long as it works and so long as they're not being cheated. So I would argue that yes, it allows us to perhaps reach the most skeptical of users, which we can't reach at the moment, but no, in the sense that unless kind of what we're doing is done well, we're doing it properly, but unless we do what we're doing, which is kind of lowering the barrier, making it transparent, I think we're not going to see the market grow. So bit of a yes and no answer there.
Then the next question is from Tobias. Which kinds of users will be connected to the QKD network in Malta?
Again, fantastic question. So at the moment, we're kind of, all I can speak about is the current phase. Because for the next phase, the projects are still not drafted, so let's not kind of go there. So for the current phase, we have a number of different what we call use cases. So we've got the national security / intelligence agencies that are interested in using or understanding how to use this network to safeguard some of their internal communications and kind of data gathering systems. There is government more broadly interested in using it for securing communications. We've got the two primary government data centers online at this point in time, and kind of as the primary and secondary. So that is kind of for data center disaster recovery, securing the data center disaster recovery links. We've got some academic actors on board as well. We've got the telecommunication company that might look into securing kind of its backplane. The electricity company looking at potential applications in securing critical infrastructure. And there's a couple of others which I'm sure I'm missing, but kind of broadly speaking, it's intelligence, government communication, secure data center, and critical infrastructure.
That's quite a lot of use cases.
It is it's a very ambitious project. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll leave it for you to decide.
Okay, and then we have another question in your from Tadwiwas. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. In your experience, which works better, continuous variable or discrete variable QKD?
Okay.
DV or DV?
So I'm just going to repeat something I said. It's a very non-linear problem in the language of kind of physics or mathematics. What do I mean by that? There is no, I mean, there are some rules of thumb we can extract, but there is no fixed rule that says, you know, with parameters up to this point, DV works best. With parameters beyond this point, CV works best. It's kind of sometimes CV works best because it's more loss tolerant, or so it's more tolerant to noise, excuse me. But beyond a certain amount of loss, DV will work better unless you have too much noise. So there is no real kind of a single answer to this. It really boils down to what you've got available and just mixing and matching until something works. And just to emphasize, when we're talking about our systems, we're also working with a mixture of polarization and time encoding as well. So one of our systems, the QTI systems, that encodes it's basically kind of prepare and measure, so BB84 like, and encodes the signal in the time basis. So before and after, as opposed to horizontal and vertical polarization. That's a bit more resilient to noise. But it's not as resilient as you would think, and it works at high losses, but not super high losses unless you have dark fiber. So there is no real one answer. It really is. It's an artwork. It's a work of it's a black magic. That's the term. It's black magic. You just have to somehow kind of make the things align.
So I guess there is space for both, right?
Absolutely.
So when it's very bad, then one comes in, and when it's somewhere in between. So in principle, there would be applications for both, right?
No, absolutely. So, for example, if I had long distance dark fiber, like the one we have to Sicily, Malta to Sicily, that's long distance dark fiber. In my opinion, it's discrete variables without a doubt, because at that level of loss, we're talking about 26 or 27 dB. At that level of loss, CV just doesn't work very well. On the other hand, in the intermediate loss range, so up to around 13-ish dB, 13, 14 dB, with a lot of traffic, a lot of noise, CV seems to work better. But if you go above that level of loss, then CV just doesn't work. If you lower the noise a bit, DV starts working again. So kind of, yeah, whatever works, works.
Thank you for watching this presentation, and thank you for being a valued member of our community.